Chris, let's talk about the National Hockey League because I believe it became official yesterday, but we kind of knew a little bit before that the NHL is going to come back and have a 56 game season starting on January the 13th. After what we heard was weeks of weird negotiations and talks of not even having a season, it was great to see we're going to get some hockey.
Yeah, I was getting worried as somebody who loves the NHL and will watch all 56 of the Islander games and many more. I was getting worried, but thankfully it's happening. It started, a couple months ago, right after the Lightning won the Cup. It was like there was a report that said it would be financially beneficial to many teams to not hold the season this year, which is concerning to say the least. But thankfully, everything was able to be hashed out in rooms with numbers and lawyers that I will never be able to understand, but I will always try. The issue was about prorated contracts, and the agreement before they went into the bubble wasn't being followed now, and yada, 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 and a whole bunch of stuff. And now they figured it out, and they're going to play hockey, which is awesome. I think the most interesting part of this, Dylan, is the divisions. As we know, the Islanders, Rangers, and Devils all reside in the Metropolitan Division alongside Washington, Carolina, Pittsburgh, Philadelphia, and Carolina. But now they're going to rearrange it geographically, which is very smart, and maybe they should keep these forever. But no, it's okay. Rearrange them geographically mainly because us pesky Americans are not allowed over that Canadian border. So they have to make it a 7-team Canadian division, which is going to be a lot of fun to watch, let me tell you. And then the rest of the American teams divided up into, right, middle, and left, basically, across the U.S. map. So that'll be interesting. Islanders, Rangers, and Devils obviously also in the same division. And they'll be playing against, the usuals, Washington, Pittsburgh, Philly, Buffalo, and Boston. So it'll be interesting, 56 games. And a lot of them, if I had to guess, I don't know, but a lot of them, if I had to guess, would be against those teams. The Canadian ones, they're probably going to have to play all 56 against each other. That's probably what's going to have to happen because of where we are now. But with the American ones, they could have a little bit more wiggle room. But if I had to guess, most of them will happen within that division just to keep travel light, like we saw in baseball. But 56 is better than 0. Not as good as 82, but better than 0, so I'll take it.
Certainly. A couple things I want to note about that Canadian division is there are 7 teams in that division as opposed to the 8 in the 3 American divisions. And for one thing, I love the idea of if they only play within their own division and then they only meet each other in a potential postseason. Reminds me of like 1940s baseball. Mm-hmm. when you'd only play teams in your league, and then the World Series you meet a team you had never played before. Kind of how baseball was this season, mm-hmm. And I like that. I like that kind of stuff. But worth noting that in terms of them, if they only have to play each other, which definitely in the Canadian division is going to happen, there's 7 teams in that division, meaning each team would have 6 opponents. In 56 games, you're going to have to play every team at least 9 times. That's a lot of times to meet a team. It's any modern day hockey fan would hear that and like their head would explode, like in episodes of Big Mouth when their heads explode. But
you need to watch Calgary Edmonton 9 times. So
it's going to be wonderful. But another thing I want to note is when the NHL first realigned into when they were talking about 4 separate divisions a bunch of years ago. And keep in mind, this is when you and I were like 12, 13 years old.
Yeah.
And of course, like any 12, 13-year-old, I was obsessed with division alignments. My brain thinks that's the coolest thing in the world. So when there was talk of 4 separate conferences as opposed to 2 conferences with 2 divisions each, these divisions, at least for the American teams, look a lot more like the initial plan was that I had heard reports of as a 12-year-old. Specifically, that I didn't love the idea of the Bruins being like the Bruins and the Sabres being separated from the Rangers, the Devils, and the Islanders, and the Flyers. It didn't make too much sense to me.
The one that doesn't make sense to me is the Canadian teams in the same division as the Florida teams. That I can't get my head around that one. I've tried for like 7 years now. I can't figure it out. Why is Montreal in the same division as Tampa Bay and not Buffalo? Why? They are in Buffalo and not New York or whatever. Makes no sense.
But and from my memory of those original reports, they made a lot more logistical sense because, of course, the reason they had to realign in the first place was when the Atlanta Thrashers moved to Winnipeg and they were playing in the Southeast Division. That couldn't keep happening. They're like the Dallas Cowboys playing the NFC East. It just doesn't make any sense.
Right.
But and then they realigned it. The second option they'd gone with didn't make any sense. To have Canadian teams playing with Florida teams, to separate New York teams and Boston teams into separate divisions, didn't make any sense at all. To separate the Red Wings and the Blackhawks was not something I particularly liked. Didn't make much sense to me personally. So this alignment, like you kind of hinted at earlier, might be the way to go for the NHL in the future. I think this might be the right one.
The only reason I would disagree is because geographically speaking, having Vancouver and Montreal in the same division makes no sense. But maybe it's similar. It could be similar where they just like rearrange some things and they bump some teams out because it just makes a little bit more sense to me. I don't know. Maybe that's just me. But I do like the idea of just like drawing a grid and just, making it like that. But I think a 56-game season is a lot better than I anticipated. I don't know what you were thinking, because I still text with our good friend Jack Caldwell, who loves hockey as well. And he was getting legitimately nervous that we weren't going to have a season. I was still hopeful. I was like, we'll work out. We'll play 45 games or whatever. He was like, no, it's not happening. Like he completely was like, I don't think this is going to happen. They're so far apart, and all the rumors saying they're so far apart. And then all of a sudden it just kind of happened. So it was surprising, and I'm extremely grateful for the fact that they figured this out. And I'm excited to, talk about some real hockey for the first time since September. It's been a while now. I know that the World Juniors are starting on Christmas Day, which excites me more than it excites most American people. And some real NHL hockey coming around the corner. So should be a lot of fun. And we get the NBA starting on Christmas Day. So all those sports that ended in a bubble, figuring out new ways to start. The NBA figured it out a lot quicker than the NHL did. But it is what it is, and they'll play some games and we'll have some fun.
Absolutely. I will say, and this is part of what was making me nervous before the official NHL season was announced, is that the only sport that I think ever in any situation, if I had to choose one sport that a situation like this would shut it down completely for a season, 100%. For some reason, it's hockey.
Well, there's no fans to begin with. There's not, like, it doesn't, you know what I mean? Like, it's the lowest on the totem pole to begin with. So if you were to cut something off, you'd cut it off there,
But it's worth mentioning each of those leagues, each of the major professional sports in North America are still an ends and means unto themselves, meaning you would think that not their specific communities would be able to figure something out. But for whatever reason in hockey, I'm assuming it has something to do with the relationship between the Players Association and the owners. I guess it's just more strenuous than it is in other sports. It perplexes me every time this happens. There was obviously a shutdown in 05-06. There was no season. We almost didn't have a season. What was that, 7-8 years ago? In 20.
So it would be 04 was the lockout. 2012 was the 48-game season, and now that's
So that's 3 times in our memory as young people that the NHL's been in trouble of not having a season at all. And one time it actually happened. So it's peculiar, but it does seem to be the way the NHL functions.
It is peculiar indeed, but 56 is 56. We'll take it.
56 is 56, and we will absolutely take it. So let me ask you, Chris, your Islanders, my Rangers, my State's Devils, They're all, of course, in the same division this year with the Bruins, the Sabres, the Flyers, the Penguins, and the Capitals. Them plus our teams round out the division. Not too much different from the two Eastern Conference divisions in the past. How do you expect this division to turn out?
Well, it's tough to know without a playoff format. I do like out of all those teams, you can pick one. I'm picking Boston. But obviously,
Yeah.
like Philly does a lot. You can't count out Pittsburgh and Washington with their two star players. Islanders were, 2 games away from the Stanley Cup final. Rangers had a heck of an offseason again. And Buffalo just got Matt Duchene. Not Matt Duchene. I'm sorry. They got Taylor Hall. I don't know why I said Matt Duchene. It's not the right person. It happens. So the only team I'd count out is New Jersey, again, for the second year in a row. How about that? Where in the Metropolitan Division last year, they're really the only team with no chance to make it. Now, the only team I'm not giving a chance to surprise me this year. I'm giving Buffalo a chance to surprise me. The other teams, if they do well, not going to surprise me. New Jersey, not so great.
I see no reason why they wouldn't be dreadful again.